Hello and welcome to Ghoulish. I'm Max Booth, a host, and today on the program, I'm talking to Lucas Mangum about none other than professional wrestling. Now you might be asking, well, Max Booth, a host, how is that spooky? Well, I'll fucking tell you in the episode. That's what we get to. That's what this episode is about, god damn it. So just listen to it, okay? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Lucas Mangum, hello and welcome to Ghoulish.
Hi, thanks for having me, Max. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I am so glad you said you would do this episode today because, well, today I'm talking about wrestling and I don't know who else I could have gotten to come on the show to discuss this with me. Because if you mention the word wrestling to many people nowadays, they kind of look at you with a bad expression.
Yes, it's never a good expression. It's always like, "Oh, you like that, huh?"
Now, why do you think that is? I have ideas, and most of them are homophobic.
Yeah, no. I mean, that seems to be, part of it. There's also, I don't know, like, I mean, I'm always weirded out when people are like, "Oh, well, it's fake," and I'm just like, "Yeah, but, so is Game of Thrones, so."
So is football. I mean, come on.
Yeah, totally.
Everybody, the ones who count, they know who's gonna win.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But like growing up, I have three brothers, and the oldest one of mine, he would watch wrestling with me all the time. He loved it a lot, so he kind of got me into it. And then the second oldest brother I have would constantly just make like gay jokes to us about it, like, "Oh, what do you like watching shows about guys with no t-shirts on? Interesting." Just dumb shit like that, and that's been most of the criticism that I've encountered all my life. That and the wrestling's fake, although I haven't seen that one too much.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one in a while. I mean, people have kind of like learned to accept it as this kind of, thing that like, you're still weird if you like it, but, like, I mean, they're like, okay, like they know it's fake. I'm not going to just like bother them and say that it's fake,
I do like the, you ever see that movie Ready to Rumble with David Arquette?
I never actually saw that movie. I remember when it came out though, and it was kind of in the waning days of WCW, and they actually ended up bringing David Arquette in, and he became WCW champion for a while.
I knew that, yeah. I mean, how can you listen to something like what you just told me and think, oh, I dislike wrestling? Right? Nothing else can do anything like that.
Anything can happen. No, I mean, I remember when I watched it for the first time, Hulk Hogan it was a Hulk Hogan thing, and I was like, super young. And my dad was like, they're not really fighting. And for some reason, like even at that young age, I was like more impressed because of that. Like, I was like, so it's like theater,
Yeah.
And these people are like, putting their bodies on the line and using their whole body to kind of tell these stories. And I just think that's really cool.
It's way more impressive once you realize all this is just practice.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is a spooky podcast, Lucas.
Yeah,
and wrestling by itself isn't exactly spooky, but over the years, I know they've had plenty of ghoulish storylines and plots going on. Specifically, About a Sultan necromancer.
Yeah, yeah. So he's so the Undertaker you're referring to is probably the most famous example of horror in wrestling. But I mean, there's other examples. I mean, you've got his storyline brother Kane, um, and who was burned to death in a fire allegedly,
So I don't
and
know. It's been a while, so I've forgotten most of the
yeah.
background between these two infamous siblings. Do you want to refresh me on this?
Yes. So early in 1997, The Undertaker was feuding with his former manager, Paul Bearer. And at one point, Paul Bearer goes, "Kane's alive. Your brother's alive." And The Undertaker gets really freaked out. And like for this, it was one of their better slow burn, better examples of slow burn storytelling in wrestling. Like just almost for like something like 9 months, they're teasing this guy Kane that's going to come, and he's alive. And the Undertaker's just really bothered by it, and you're kind of thrown off because the Undertaker has like been built up as this intimidating, scary character who might have supernatural powers, and yet he's afraid of this kind of this ghost from his past. And then in October of that year, he's wrestling Shawn Michaels in the very first Hell in a Cell match, which is basically a cage match where like not just the ring is caged off, but the also the like ringside area is caged off, and there's also caging on the top of that. And Kane shows up and he rips the door off and attacks the Undertaker. And yeah, it was pretty spooky.
I mean, that sounds almost biblical. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, is there a reason why Kane is so upset with the Undertaker? How
Well,
come they just don't
the
get
Undertaker
along?
started the fire.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
allegedly.
What a dick.
I know, what a dick. Well, kids, they play with fire, and bad stuff happens.
Now, Shawn Michaels, wasn't his name the Sexy Child?
Well, he had a song called "The Sexy Boy," and but he was, the Heartbreak Kid, I believe, is his, I guess his nickname. Although Shawn Michaels is technically not his real name either. I think it's like Michael Hickenbottom or something like that.
Well, I'm glad he changed his name because that's
Yeah,
awful.
I like Shawn Michaels better.
I like the Sexy Child. Imagine the job interviews. Yeah, I am the Sexy Child.
That would be, yeah, that'd be one of those things that wouldn't look good in retrospect, right? Like, that'd be one of the things that people would hold against me for liking wrestling, I guess.
Yeah. Can you imagine his obit? The Sexy Child dies age 75.
Oh man, right? Like, yeah, like isn't wrestling known for having like sexy children? Like, I'm like, no.
Oh, you like that show about the sexy kids? What, Honey Boo Boo?
Yeah. Oh man.
I seem to recall some plot line with the Undertaker about how he was always being threatened to be buried alive. What am I thinking of?
Yeah, so the Undertaker, given his kind of, mystique, especially in the 90s when they were still kind of playing up the supernatural angle, it kind of dwindled over the years, but they used to he had a bunch of special matches that were kind of geared specifically towards him. And one of them was a casket match where the way you win the match is you throw your opponent into the casket and close the door. And fun fact, at one point, Kane rolled Undertaker into a casket again in a match with Shawn Michaels and lit the casket on fire, which is, attempted murder, but, it's wrestling, so you just kind of go with it.
I mean, there's a lot of attempted homicides in wrestling.
Yeah, yeah. So there's the casket match, and then there's the buried alive match where you like throw your guy in a hole and cover him in dirt. So it's, I mean, kind of riffs on the same thing.
So good. How can you
I love it so
imagine?
much.
Can you imagine the fucking Reynolds room? Let's just get a bunch of goddamn dirt and throw someone into it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh man.
I wish someone would throw me in a casket. Oh, So,
Total.
I do have a question. Gold
Oh,
Dust. What the fuck
yeah.
was that?
So he went on to become a little more like kind of a cartoonish version, and be a little more funny. But before, it was clearly, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would say the character was, the creation of the character might have had some homophobic motivations. It was kind of he would do things that would make his male opponents, sexually uncomfortable, and that like made him a bad guy automatically. According to wrestling.
He
Yeah.
wasn't a supernatural guy at all.
No, no, no. He was just
Hmm.
he just kind of dressed really extravagantly, and was a movie
Okay.
star, and he would tie his opponents up, spread eagle in the corner of the ring and kick them in the nuts. That's pretty horrifying, I guess.
Nice. That's the
Yeah.
only way I can come these days. Uh, well, let's talk about some more supernatural wrestlers. I can't think of anyone else, but surely you
Yeah.
must know.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, there aren't a whole lot in terms of like supernatural, but there are definitely some with some kind of horror qualities to the characters. Um, in Lucha Underground, which was a wrestling show that ran from, I want to say, 2014 to 2017, maybe 2018. And they had a character named Mil Muertes, which is basically the man of a thousand deaths. And he also kind of had these like, you'd have like casket matches, and he had this a manager named Katrina, and she would, every time he would, vanquish his opponent, she would crawl across the ring and like lick their face, and that was called like the lick of death. And 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 yeah, I'm not making a great case for wrestling, I guess. And then he also had these henchmen called the Disciples of Death, which were essentially these three skeletons. And that was pretty cool too.
That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah. And then let's see, you had uh, Mankind, who was a character played by Mick Foley, who I would say, kind of had a horror element, to him. He was very like, he was supposedly deformed, and he was deranged, and he hung out in boiler rooms, and for a while was one of the only people who always got the upper hand on the Undertaker, which kind of gave him these kind of I guess kind of a mystique as well.
I
Uh,
loved him so much when I was a kid.
oh, he was great,
I
and then they.
had action figures and everything, man.
And he did the the three faces of Foley, where he was almost like a split personality, where he was Mankind,
Jack
and
Foley.
yeah, Cactus Jack,
Yeah, Cactus Jack.
and who was like his old hardcore wrestling persona. And then he was Dude Love, which was like kind of this like
That's right.
basically like him being Shawn, like wanting to be Shawn Michaels, but obviously not
So many
having the
sexy
same
kids in
physique
wrestling.
as. Yeah, I know. What the fuck.
Now, I talking about this just reminded me. Didn't the WWF have some type of vampire guy going around? He was
Oh
dressed
yeah,
in all
that's right.
white.
That's right. There was Gangrel, and he had
Yes.
his partners, the Brood, Edge and Christian. That was how I guess Edge like ended up joining, for a while. And
That's
they
right.
would
Yeah.
every time they beat an opponent, blood would rain down from the arena and just splatter them, on this vanquished opponent would be covered in blood, and it was called a bloodbath. I thought that
That
was pretty.
is one of the that sadly is one of the possible conclusions of edging.
Oh. Yes. Yes, it is.
How much blood do you think they spent on each match? Oh my god.
I don't know, man. It was, they were starting to, that was when they were starting to, the WWE or WWF at the time was starting to do really well, because of, Stone Cold and The Rock were like, basically printing money, so I guess they had a bigger budget, for that kind of stuff.
I never liked Stone Cold. What about you?
At first I didn't because I was a huge Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels fan, and Stone Cold was kind of, the next thing, and I saw him as kind of replacing my guys. And then when I kind of finally accepted that Bret Hart wasn't coming back, and Shawn Michaels was on hiatus for like 4 years because he hurt his back in the same match where Undertaker got lit on fire in the casket, weirdly enough. And so I kind of ended up accepting Stone Cold as, my guy. And now I kind of am like super nostalgic for him. And I will sometimes watch the video of every stunner ever. Where
How long is that? Talking about
like
edgy, holy shit.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
I guess I didn't like him because he reminded me of my alcoholic neighbor too much.
That's fair. That's fair. That
Yeah.
was kind of who he was playing. He was kind of playing this like blue collar character, who was fighting against the man and drinking a lot of beer while doing it.
Now, how did you get involved in wrestling?
So I saw the Hulk Hogan thing when I was real young, and and then I like kind of, I didn't have cable, so I didn't really watch it, beyond that. But then like in middle school, was when the Attitude Era in the late '90s was kind of coming up, and everybody was kind of just getting into it, and I was, and all my friends were talking about it, and you know how it is, like all your friends are talking about something, you kind of want to get in on that, and yeah, and I started watching it, and it kind of I kind of ended up like watching it, even after my friends stopped watching it. And But then I took like another like really long break. I'd say from about like 2001 to 2015, I watched very little wrestling. Um, and But then I got back into it like the summer of 2015. I was just like, I was working this job as a 911 operator, and I was just like bored one night, and I don't even remember what kicked it off, but I just started like looking up old clips, and then I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna get the WWE Network and watch SummerSlam next week.
Oh my god, did that interfere with the job at all? Like, did you get any
Yeah,
like 911 calls? Like, oh my god, this guy's trying to get me, and you will like, we'll give him the signal, lady. Body slam that motherfucker.
yeah, kick their ass. No, we were allowed to do we had a pretty lax environment because the calls were so stressful. It was like as long as like we weren't watching it during a call or whatever, we could kind of do whatever we wanted.
Oh my god, can you imagine calling 911 and in the background someone is shouting like "Feed him, Mr. Sacco"?
Right?
Jeez.
Oh man. So
Did
good.
you ever like do wrestling like at home, like with friends or relatives?
Oh yeah, so my brother and my childhood friend, when I was in middle school, and like we would take a mattress off the bed and throw it in the living room, and we'd do moves off the couches and slam each other, and yeah, and then sometimes we'd wrestle at the park, and I don't know, one time my friend, he called me, and my brother and me were supposed to wrestle for the championship that we had made, and out of cardboard, mind you, and he's just like, you better watch your back at that match. I was just like, all right. And I don't know what came over me, like we were like, my brother and I were wrestling, and my friend starts interfering and like beating me up, and like I don't know, like I kind of started taking it seriously and
Oh
like
no.
really fighting back. Like, I don't know. I was a kid. I just got like
You can
adrenaline or something.
You
I
could
don't
get
know.
into it, man. Yeah, I used to do matches with my sibling as well. I mean, we also had a belt made of the same shit. We called ourselves the HCW Hardcore Championship Wrestling.
Nice,
We
nice.
had theme songs we would walk out to. My song was "Freak on a Leash." I think my brother had some Eminem song. Mind
That's
you,
great.
he's 11 years older than me, so I think this is more embarrassing for him than me. I mean, I'm like 9, he's 19, 20.
Yeah, yeah. And then it's just like you've got to put like one hand, I mean, you kind of got to weigh it out. Like, what's more embarrassing, corn or M&M? No, I'm kidding. I actually like both. So,
Yeah, me too. I meant the fact that he was wrestling with me.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna beat up my 11-year-old brother because
I mean,
reasons.
we had Phil's blood matches, and we took
Oh
that
my God.
serious. Yeah.
Did you guys blade like the wrestlers do? Like, like cut open your forehead or
No, no, no.
okay.
I think we did one match like that, and I won because I scratched him by mistake.
Oh shit.
I was like, oh no.
That's
I
awesome.
recall him laying me in the backyard, which I mean, if I stop talking after that sentence, that sounds bad. But
Yeah.
he laid me in the backyard in the grass, and he got on top of the shed and jumped off on me.
Oh my
I don't
gosh.
know how I'm alive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I jumped off of couches and stuff, but man, that's pretty bonkers.
I recall one time, most of my childhood, we didn't have like a door on the bathroom because it was just broken. So
Mm.
we would when we would go, we would have to take it and lean it against the opening.
Oh man.
And finally, my dad finally fixed it after years of not having one. And that same day, we were wrestling, and I tackled him through it, and it broke again.
Oh,
And he was like, "I'm not fucking fixing this again."
that's bananas.
Oh, so you've been writing something about wrestling with someone else. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so the author of Genital Grinder, Ryan Harding, and I are collaborating on a piece called Pandemonium, which is a tribute to two things. It is well, the title is a tribute to two things. It's first, it's my little shout out to Milton, who I believe either coined the term or made it famous because it was the city that the devils built in hell after the fall in Paradise Lost. And this also refers to back in the day when the audience was really into it and losing their mind. Like the announcers would say, "It's pandemonium here at the blah 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 center," and so I thought I'd do that. And so not only is this book a tribute to my love of wrestling, it is also a tribute to a series of movies that Ryan and I really hold dear. And they're these Italian horror films called Demons. So Demons 1, Demons 2, and then The Church, which is technically Demons 3, but was never released as such. And they're basically these just like, I mean, the movies are basically just excuses to like, kill people in really inventive ways. And I don't know, I just kind of got the idea of, instead of like it coming from like, a movie theater or a TV screen in the second one, or I don't know, something in the church. I don't remember exactly what kicks it off. What if it was like this underground wrestling event where like some guy gets like legit killed in the ring and like turns into, a demon, and like it's like then he just like kind of spreads the virus and the people are locked in the arena and
Oh
they're
my
just like,
god. It's kind of
yeah,
like from dusk till dawn in that aspect, huh?
sure, sure. Yeah, I could definitely see that as well.
That's just what popped in my head immediately. Like trapped in a big building with creatures trying to kill you. I don't know.
Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah.
awesome. And why can't I read it right now again?
So we're coming up on the halfway point. So we're writing it right now.
Yeah. Is this a
But
novella or a novel?
I think it's gonna be full length because we're like we're about 30,000 words and it's still like kind of moving pretty quickly, but not really with an end in sight.
Oh man, please send that to me when you finish. Do you
Yeah, I
want to do
absolutely
you want to
will.
promote any books that someone could buy right now?
Yeah, sure. There is my collection Engines of Ruin was reissued earlier this year with 5 new stories. And so there's 13 stories in all. It's horror, crime, weird fiction, kind of a streak of, sexiness in some of the stories as well. And
Any
I don't know.
sexy
I mean,
kids?
no sexy kids.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Um, so yeah, that's like a thing that I've been promoting. It's out through Crossroad Press, who they've kind of made their name for reissuing a lot of you know uh, seminal titles from the heyday of horror, like a lot of the Skip Inspector books, and stuff by Chet Williamson, and the like. Um, and then of course there is Saint Sadist, which also came out earlier this year, which is kind of this crazy poetically written story about a woman who gets impregnated by her father and runs away and ends up falling in with this cult, and bad stuff happens.
I mean, that's kind of sounds like the plot of a wrestling thing.
That's true.
I
That's
can
true.
see that happening. That's
That's
not.
like,
That is
yeah.
a compliment, by the way.
No, of course, of course. That's like peak Attitude Era silliness.
It's pretty raw, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I've read Saint Sadist, and it is fantastic, and I cannot recommend it enough.
Oh, and also, I wanted to plug the Big Book of Blasphemy, which is out now through Necro Publications. It's got my short story Sister Scar in it, and it's also got stories from Brian Keene, Ryan Harding, Ed Lee. It has the final published story by Charlie Jacob, and then also. Gosh, I can go down. There's like 30 stories in there, and they're all really fucked up stories with religious imagery. So if you're into that sort of thing,
Who isn't?
I would recommend it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Who isn't into that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
agree, especially in
yeah,
our scene, right?
exactly. That sounds awesome.
Oh yeah, and Wrath and Monaco are in it too. Wrath James White and Monaco O'Rourke. So it's got quite a
Nice,
stacked roster.
nice. Before we end this, what have you been reading lately that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I'm reading two books right now. I'm reading Survivor by J.F. Gonzalez. I'm kind of ashamed to admit that I'm reading it for the first time. But I've got to say, 15 years later, I don't know if there's been a more disturbing book.
Oh my
It's,
god.
yeah, I mean, people have told me about it, and so I know what's coming, right? I know what the book is about. I know what's the main, awful set pieces in the middle, and I can't stop reading, even though I don't really want to see what's about to happen. I mean, and that's just the mark of really good writing. I think J.F. Gonzalez was really had something, and and then I'm also reading House of Fallen Trees by Gina Rinaldi, which is really cool because she's like, she was considered one of the founders of the whole Bizarro movement. But this is, I would say it's a fairly, I mean, so far, a fairly quiet and brooding ghost story. And I really like it. It's like really got a good main character that like I really kind of relate to, and it's got like a really dense atmosphere. I don't know. I just really dig it.
Nice. Gina's good. She wrote a novella called Ghost Chant, I think is the name, and that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I've read Ghost Chant. I like Ghost Chant.
It's been a
I
while
read.
since I read that one, and I would recommend Livia Llewellyn's Fullness, which is a collection of fucking cosmic erotica. I don't even know how to describe it, but she has the goods, and I'm just super impressed every with each new short story in the collection. It's great.
Yes.
I would also recommend Saint Sadist by Lucas Mangum.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
This isn't about you, Lucas. Can you? How can folks find you online?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Real Lucas Mangum. I also blog, I want to say like weekly at lucasmangum.com. And that's where like most updates end up. Although usually I end up just tweeting my updates and then like forget to put them on my website. And then they kind of, end up on my website like a month late. But, that's life, I guess. And then there's my Patreon, which is patreon.com/lmangumfiction, where I give 2 free chapters of a serial novel every month. I just wrapped up one called Blood and Brimstone. It's the sequel to my first book, Flesh and Fire. And the one that I just started, which the first chapter actually goes up today, that as we're recording this, is I Was a Teenage Cult Leader. So I mean,
oh
the
my
title
God.
says
Wait,
it
what's
all.
this? This sounds awesome.
Yeah, so it's about a boy who goes to this like super fancy school, and he finds out that like the bully in his crowd, like who are like that are like really like giving him a hard time. Like the bully's really weirdly into this like occult stuff, and so he makes a deal that like if I get this ghost on camera, like that haunts the school, you'll stop fucking with me, and that's like what gets his foot in the door with this crowd. But then things kind of get pretty Scarface from there, and he kind of ends up working his way up the ranks and kind of forming his own cult in this super fancy school.
Oh my God, that sounds so fun. I'm gonna have to subscribe. God damn it.
Yeah, it's only $1. I try to keep it simple. Like I used to have like 1,000,000 tiers, and I was just like, no one cares. Like,
yeah. I'm in the process of subscribing right now. That's why I asked.
Wonderful.
That's why I stopped talking. Yeah, I can't wait to read that. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Lucas, for doing this. I will definitely link to all those things in the show notes. So if anyone else is interested, you can just click those links. You don't even have to type anything.
Yeah, it's magic.
It's magic. All right, well, have a good day, Lucas. We'll talk.
Yeah, you too, man.
I won't be talking to you next week. I have someone else coming on, but perhaps in a different time we can come back and talk again.
Oh yeah, of course.
All right. Have a good one, man. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Ghoulish. Did you like what you just heard? Want to listen to these episodes daily instead of weekly? Well, you are in luck, Daddy-O, because over on Patreon we've announced a new stretch goal. Once we begin making 1,000 bones a month, we will begin releasing Ghoulish 5 nights a week. That's 1,000 bones, my sweet, beautiful, spooky children. Now go on over to patreon.com/PMM Publishing to pledge now, today, right this second, don't wait. You can also follow this show at GhoulishPod.com and tweet at us at GhoulishPod. Please rate and review us on iTunes, and do not forget, whatever you do, live spooky, die spooky.